What if one morning you woke up and nature was gone? Not by accident, but buried in concrete by the very people meant to protect your neighborhood. This is the true story of a man named Samir, a peaceful homeowner turned unlikely hero who uncovered lies, corruption, and a secret that nearly drowned a community. But in the end, it wasn't revenge that won. It was the creek. It began like any other morning in Willow Bend, a small, pristine neighborhood tucked behind oak-lined streets and polite silence, the kind of place where lawns were measured in inches and trash bins had curfews. But for Samir Ali, the only thing that truly mattered wasn't in the front yard. It was the creek, the quiet lifeline that curled behind his modest home like a silver whisper. He stood barefoot on the dewy grass, coffee in hand, as the morning sun shimmered off the slow-moving stream. Frogs chirped in harmony, and dragonflies danced just above the water. It wasn't just a piece of nature to him. That creek held memories of the first time his daughter caught a frog, of fireflies that lit up the summer nights, and of the morning his late wife whispered, "This place feels alive." Samir had fought hard to keep this place. After moving from the city a decade ago, he wanted silence, space, roots, and the creek, always steady, had become his anchor. But lately, the peace had grown brittle. The Homeowners Association, an unseen but ever-present force, had started tightening its grip. First, it was the mailbox paint, too faded. Then the bird bath, potential mosquito hazard. Samir had brushed it off at first, bureaucracy disguised as neighborly concern. But it was more than that. Behind every friendly email signed warmly the HOA committee, there was a cold warning. "We're watching. Hey, real quick. If you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to hit that like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. And while you're at it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from." All right, let's keep going. He didn't fear them, but he knew their type. Polite tyrants in pastel sweaters. That morning, as he watched a heron glide across the still creek, his phone buzzed. Another HOA message. Subject: immediate attention required body. Reminder: lawn edging must be uniform and within the specified 2-inch limit. Compliance inspection scheduled Friday. Samir scoffed, shoving the phone into his pocket. 2 inches? What next? Approved wind direction? Just then, something unusual caught his eye. A trio of men in safety vests stood down by the community's shared greenbelt. Just a few houses down. One held a clipboard. Another had a surveying rod. The third was staring straight into the creek. Samir's stomach tightened. They didn't say anything about construction, he muttered. He walked back inside. But the image stayed with him. The men, the equipment, the way one of them had pointed downstream, toward his backyard. That evening, he asked his neighbor, Mrs. Langley, a retired teacher and self-proclaimed HOA loyalist. She smiled too tightly. "Oh yes, I heard they're doing some safety reinforcement. You know, concrete barriers or something. All approved, I'm sure." "Concrete?" Samir's voice faltered. "Yes. Don't worry, dear. It's all in the name of property value." She winked. "And peace of mind." But Samir didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the heron didn't come. The frogs were silent. And the creek wasn't flowing. He stepped outside and froze. The stream behind his house was gone, replaced by a jagged gray slab of dry concrete, freshly poured, still smelling of industrial cement. His sanctuary had been buried overnight. His hands trembled as he stepped toward the edge of the slab. Tiny bubbles rose from beneath the surface, as if the earth itself were choking. And just then, from the far end of the greenbelt, a voice shouted, "Sir, please step back from the construction site." Samir turned slowly. The same man with the clipboard. Only this time he wasn't holding a pen. He was holding a camera. Would you trust a neighborhood that silences nature overnight? The concrete didn't just kill the creek. It murdered something inside Samir. He stood frozen at the edge of his backyard, heart hammering in his chest. The morning air was thick, the silence heavier than usual. No frogs, no birds. Just the quiet hum of drying cement and a chemical sting in the air. The stream that once whispered its way through the neighborhood now lay beneath a slab of gray, ugly permanence. His first instinct was denial. Maybe it's temporary. A lining, maybe some kind of maintenance? But then he noticed the bright orange caution tape, the heavy metal stakes still jammed into the soil, and the rectangular trench now carved unnaturally along the water's original path. Samir stormed inside and opened his laptop. No emails, no notifications. He checked the HOA's digital bulletin board. Nothing. Not a single mention of creek alteration, flood control, or concrete work. His pulse quickened. They didn't even tell us. He called the HOA number listed in his welcome binder from years ago. A woman answered, cheerful, scripted. Willow Bend Homeowners Association. This is Tamra. Yes, this is Samir Ali from Lot 18. Why is the creek behind my home filled with concrete? A pause. Oh, yes, that's part of the new flood mitigation initiative, Tamra chirped. The board voted last quarter. It's all for safety, of course. Heavy rains, erosion risk. Very standard these days. I never got a notice. Was there a meeting? Well, yes, but only for Level 3 homeowners, board-eligible members. I believe the mailer went out in, let me check, March. That's impossible. I never got it. And this creek is on shared greenbelt property, which requires full resident input. Another pause. Less cheerful now. I'm sorry, Mr. Ali. Everything was approved. It's already underway. You'd have to take it up at the next quarterly meeting. Click. Samir sat back in his chair, jaw clenched. Take it up at the meeting? By then the concrete would be dry, the damage irreversible. Later that day, he walked to the construction site, phone in hand, recording everything. He approached a worker in a reflective vest. What exactly are you building? He asked. Just following the plans, man, the worker muttered, not looking up. Can I see them? Not my call. The man jerked his thumb toward a white trailer nearby. Inside, Samir found a man in a collared shirt labeled Beaufort Engineering. He was poring over blueprints. Are you the contractor? Samir asked, voice firm. Project manager. What permit was filed for this job? The man blinked. You are? I live on the property this creek runs through. You're encasing part of my backyard in concrete. The project manager gave a vague shrug. Talk to the HOA. We're just following the specs. Specs that don't exist in public records, Samir replied, holding up his phone. I checked the county site. There's no approval filed for altering a natural waterway within residential bounds. You need EPA clearance for that. The man's eyes narrowed. You recording me? Samir nodded. Sure am. Without another word, the man grabbed a walkie-talkie and whispered something inaudible. Within minutes, 2 more workers arrived and ushered Samir off the site. Back home, he began to dig, literally and digitally. He searched county permits, pulled GIS data on water pathways, even emailed a friend at the city's environmental office. What he found unsettled him. The creek behind his house was technically a Class B stream, protected by local conservation bylaws. The HOA didn't have the authority to touch it. 2 days later, a letter appeared in Samir's mailbox. No postage, no return address. Just a single folded page. Stop interfering. This is bigger than your backyard. He stared at the note for a long time, fingers trembling slightly. Who knew he was looking into it? Why was this so secretive? What did the HOA have to hide? That night, unable to sleep, Samir sat in the dark with an old flashlight and scanned through the HOA bylaws binder. On page 47, in fine print, he found it. Alterations to shared natural features require approval from a 75% resident quorum unless marked as a safety emergency order by executive board action. He flipped to the executive board list. 5 names. One stood out: Derek Langley, president, husband of Mrs. Langley. The same woman who had smiled sweetly when she mentioned peace of mind. Samir's thoughts spiraled. This wasn't about safety. This was a power move. Or worse, a cover-up. What would you do if your neighborhood's HOA was hiding something beneath concrete? 3 weeks later, the sky opened like a ruptured vein. Dark clouds crawled in over Willow Bend like an invading army. The air thickened, heavy with pressure, and something more ominous, a sense of reckoning. Samir stood at his living room window, arms crossed, as sheets of rain lashed the earth. Lightning split the horizon, illuminating the ghost of the creek now sealed under concrete. It had rained before, but never like this. By midnight the gutters overflowed. Downspouts gurgled like drowning lungs. Samir's phone buzzed with emergency, weather alerts, but he didn't move. He just watched the concrete path behind his house, unnatural, sterile, and dead. Then came the first scream. He raced to the back door, pulled on boots, and stepped into the storm. Water rushed along the fence line, searching, clawing for a place to go, but the concrete redirected it. It coiled around his yard like a serpent and slithered, straight toward the Langley house. Samir grabbed his flashlight and headed toward the road. The neatly manicured lawns that had once defined Willow Bend were now submerged wetlands, small pools forming around porch steps, water pressing against garage doors. Derek Langley's prized flower beds? Gone, swallowed in muddy currents. Samir spotted a neighbor, Mr. Chen, standing knee-deep in water near his SUV. "The drains are overflowing," he shouted. "Nothing's going down. It's like the whole ground's pushing it back up." Of course it was. The creek, once nature's drainpipe, had been choked to death, and now the earth was fighting back. Samir's yard remained dry. The untouched soil absorbed what it could, slowly, patiently, like it always had. By morning, the HOA committee's street looked like a disaster zone. Water pooled up to the mailbox flags. Derek Langley's front door was sandbagged. His wife, Mrs. Langley, stood on the porch in a robe, shivering. Mascara streaked down her face. Samir stepped onto the sidewalk, phone in hand. "Still feel like this was for our peace of mind?" he called out over the rain. She looked at him, hollow-eyed, and said nothing. Over the next 48 hours, Willow Bend transformed. The flooding had crippled half the neighborhood. Basements were wrecked, carpets ruined, insurance adjusters stalked, the streets like vultures. Tempers flared. At the emergency HOA meeting, held in a hastily cleared garage, the tension snapped like a stretched cable. "We were never told the creek would be buried," one man shouted. "You said it was for safety," screamed another. Derek Langley, soaked and pale, stood behind a folding table, clutching soaked papers. "It was necessary flood control. We had expert reports." "Then why are our homes underwater?" snapped a woman near the back. Samir stepped forward, holding a binder. "Because you violated conservation law. You buried a natural drainage system under concrete. The water has nowhere to go, so it's going backward, into your homes." He dropped the binder onto the table. Inside were copies of the bylaws, photos, county records, and most damning of all, a signed email chain between Derek Langley and Beaufort Engineering, discussing unofficial early clearance, and a note marked, "Confidential. We'll push it through under emergency status." "No time for a full resident vote," murmurs swept through the room. "You lied to us," someone whispered. "No," Derek said, jaw clenched. "We did what needed to be done." Samir's eyes narrowed. And now you're going to undo it. Outside, the rain had slowed, but the damage was done. Nature had turned, and the neighborhood's perfect illusion had drowned beneath its own arrogance. Samir walked home, rain dripping from his coat, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled. Natto, drop in his yard. The answer didn't come from Google or the county clerk. It came from a dusty tin box in Samir's attic. He had been searching for old property records, anything to legally challenge the HOA's brazen destruction of the creek. And tucked between yellowed tax documents and brittle inspection papers, he found it. A 1954 land deed, written in elegant cursive and bound with a faded red ribbon. The paper crackled as he unfolded it. But the words were sharp as ever. The stream known as Willow Run shall remain untouched by development or alteration, per Preservation Clause 7b, unless full residential consensus, no less than 90%, is obtained and certified by an independent arbiter. Samir's breath caught. He read it again, then again, legally protected. Not just as a neighborhood feature, but as a preserved natural corridor, enshrined in land ownership law. He felt a slow burn rise in his chest. They didn't just overstep, they broke the law. And if they hid this, what else had they hidden? Fueled by the weight of the truth, Samir began to dig deeper. With help from his friend in environmental enforcement, he obtained construction approval files from Beaufort Engineering. He compared signatures, dates, and reports, and something odd surfaced. The flood mitigation reports, allegedly used to justify the creek's destruction, were dated 2 weeks after the cement had already been poured. Backdated, falsified. More damning, the HOA had filed an insurance policy adjustment just days before the first pour, an obscure clause labeled Modified Flood Insurance Rider, which increased coverage only for the HOA committee homes. The implications were chilling. They knew the flooding would come. They planned for it, and they insured themselves first. The next neighborhood meeting was standing room only. Rain boots squelched on the floor. Voices buzzed in low suspicion. People whispered Samir's name like a warning, or a hope. At the front of the garage-turned-courtroom, Derek Langley looked less like a confident president and more like a cornered fox. Samir walked to the center with the deed in hand, a manila folder tucked beneath his arm. "I have something you all need to see," he said, voice calm but sharp. He placed the 1954 deed on the table. "This document, older than any of us here, proves the creek behind our homes is a protected stream. It cannot legally be altered without a vote from 90% of this community." Gasps rippled across the room. He held up a second sheet. "These are engineering reports filed after the creek was already filled with concrete. They were backdated to make it look legal. And then, the final blow." He opened the folder and revealed the insurance rider. "This document shows that our HOA president and a few select board members quietly adjusted their flood policies. Right before the flooding hit, knowing full well the creek's destruction would redirect water." People turned, eyes narrowing on Derek. Mrs. Langley visibly paled. "You're suggesting insurance fraud?" someone asked from the back. "I'm not suggesting," Samir said, holding the papers high. "I'm proving it." Derek stood, voice shaking. "This is a witch hunt. He doesn't understand what he's talking about." "You buried a creek and flooded half this neighborhood," someone shouted. "You lied," another barked. The room erupted. Samir remained still, eyes locked on Derek, who looked suddenly very, very small. By sunset, the committee had been suspended pending investigation. Samir handed the documents to a local journalist. The story was growing legs, fast. He walked home in the twilight, wind still rustling through the silent, broken landscape of Willow Bend. But he felt something different now. Not revenge, not even victory, just justice. Rising like water. They brought the excavators back, but this time it wasn't to bury something. It was to bring it back to life. Weeks after the investigation exposed the fraudulent scheme, the Willow Bend HOA was disbanded, replaced by an interim resident council. Fines were issued. Insurance claims were frozen. Derek Langley, gone under legal review, his mansion quiet and empty, and standing at the center of it all was Samir. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He never had. But as word of the old deed spread and the scandal made headlines, people began showing up at his door. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner," said Mr. Chen, handing over a shovel. "Let me help," whispered a teen from down the block, eyes wide with guilt. Even Mrs. Langley came, silent, placing a tray of lemonade beside a group. Clearing brush. The neighborhood had changed, and so had Samir. He now led a grassroots group called Creekback, uniting residents, environmental advocates, and even local students to help dismantle the concrete death trap. They worked in shifts, daylight to dusk, tearing down stone walls, redirecting soil, and slowly sculpting the ground back to how it once was. And then one afternoon, it returned. The sound. It started as a trickle, then a splash, then a full rush, water surging through the newly freed channel, leaping over stones, swirling around tree roots, glistening in the sun like liquid glass. Samir watched in stunned silence as frogs reappeared. Birds circled overhead. Flowers bloomed, again at the water's edge. Nature hadn't forgotten. It had simply waited for someone to fight for it. "I thought you were crazy," a neighbor admitted, watching the water dance through the restored creek. "Now I think you might be the only sane one left." Samir just smiled, kneeling to place his hand in the cool stream. It was cold, alive, honest. Now every morning he walks to the creek with a mug of coffee and watches it move, sometimes roaring. After a storm, other times gentle as a whisper. Children play by the banks. Families walk the trail that borders its flow. Peace has returned. But more than that, balance. The scars remain, on the land, on the people. But so does the lesson. When power corrupts and concrete buries truth, it takes one voice to crack the surface. Samir never wanted to be that voice, but now that he wouldn't be silenced again. He stood at the edge of the water, the late afternoon sun painting the surface gold. The wind carried a soft hum through the trees, almost like the creek was whispering its thanks. And Samir whispered back, "You're welcome." If you enjoyed this video and want to see the next part, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated. See you in the next one. Your support means the world.